From the St. Francis Yacht Club in San Francisco, this is the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, hosted by Ron Young.
Welcome to another of our Wednesday Yachting Luncheons. It's great to be back in the grill room. Holy moly, pass the word. Most people still don't know that we're alive again in the grill room. So one of the fun joys of being a member of this yacht club for 55 years now, is that I watch lots of people start out as young sailors and become great sailors, in many cases right here in our bay or up in Tinsley. And those of you who were members before the foiling thing and even before windsurfing, remember that it used to be that you'd sit down when you went sailing. But today we're going to hear all about stand-up sailing. We're going to hear all about the latest edges in foiling. And we always want to recognize people who had great accomplishments, and there's no greater accomplishment really in the world of sailing than a gold medal. And next to that, in skiing, a gold medal. So welcome, Johnny. Nice to see you here again, buddy. Johnny Mosley won a gold medal, as you remember, in '98 at Olympic. And he was a great sailor before he went off to be a skier and all that. We didn't really lose him. He just started another sport. Erica finally won 2 world championships. Not 1, but 2 world championships. Good on you, Erica. Good to have you back here again. And all of this really started when Geoff Headington, who has the foiling sports department of our sailing program at the yacht club, and who knew that we had a foiling sports? We should have one. It's the perfect thing to have. But it was great for me to hear him say, yeah, we're going to have lots more foiling sports, and they're already doing it with the wing ding and so on. So it's great to have Geoff Headington, who started sailing in Connecticut in dinghies, a genuine sailor, and switched over to the foiling side a few years ago. So come on up and bring your crowd with you, Geoff, and tell us all about the future is foiling.
Foiling into the future. There are a ton of sports that we've been doing over the years that involve hydrofoils. Some I didn't participate in. I mean, they've been around since the 70s. We're going to show you some stuff related to that. But the technology has really been, honestly, since the early 1900s, it's been coming along and developing, and it's just now exploded in kind of the sporting scene. And so we're going to take you on a bit of a retrospective of foiling sports. We're not just focusing on wing foiling, which is the new hot thing, right? But is it? Is wing foiling the new hot thing? Maybe there's more to come. So we'll talk about that as well. So we're going to take you on a bit of a retrospective. And Morgan, my co-chair of the foil sports department, I guess we're calling it, had a school obligation, otherwise he'd be on stage. I wish he was, but he did help us with all the slides. So we're going to start out kind of to level set with a video of the air chairs. So I think the air chair really introduced the potential of what a hydrofoil could do. It was early and deadly, I'm sure, for some people, but really, truly incredible. This is probably in the 80s, I would say, but it started earlier. I think the Mosleys probably had one of these things. In terms of sailing, the moth was really the standard bearer when it came to foiling, and moths were actually around, surprisingly, before foiling started. They were a regular class of fast dinghy.
I sailed moth when I was 13. Moth.
Ron's a moth sailor. In '74, from my research, they started with this picture on the left, which looks kind of like a foiling kontiki. And on through the decades and the years, they sort of developed it, figured it out, owned it, and got, by 2007, into the single line foil. So rather than having outriggers on the side of the boat, into the single line foil and all the way up to today. And it's a super popular class still. Expensive, but popular. What did the kiteboarders do? This is Chip Wasson, yacht club member. He said, you know what? I think we can use this technology in our sport, and I'm going to give it a shot. And I'm going to put this guillotine on the bottom of my board, and I'm going to wear snowboard boots with the toes cut out so that the water would drain out of the boots and he wouldn't sink to the bottom when he crashed. And he gave it a strong go in about 2007 or so, and he actually won quite a few races. He also lost races. He was fast upwind, but when it came to turning off the wind, the pressure wasn't there. The way, it could have been technique, but the way the foil was designed, it just kind of went a little too fast and a little too deep. And so he was not competitive on the downwind legs, but he did make it fly. So it was interesting, and everyone who saw it said, you know what, there's something to this hydrofoil. So what did the other kiters do and the racing kiters do? We stayed on the surface of the water 4 years. We didn't use the hydrofoil. We kind of ignored it. Chip stopped even using it because it wasn't versatile enough. And so we had our surfboards that we would use to go around the course. And you know what? It was good fun. And people from Europe and South America were coming here and racing with us. But this kind of shows the pinnacle of where we got to with the surface, I'll call them the water surface boards. Johnny on a tri-fin foil, a tri-fin board, and I don't know who that is on the bottom right, but this is around 2013. This was the big wide board and 3 fins. Then this happened.
Super speed off. Keep going, hold room. Hold back, coming back, coming back,
The Kiwis now just 1 win away from the America's Cup.
Well, I've witnessed some pretty big comebacks, and it's never over until it's over.
That was a real aha moment for the kite fleet. We realized that there was truly a faster way and we needed to dedicate some time to it. So here's Johnny Headington, Erica's brother, up in clearly Sherman Island, on an early model of board and foil, figuring it out, doing just that. The European manufacturers, there were a couple of them that were working on hydrofoils and making it work, and we realized that that's how we had to get around the race course. Here's another just funny looking board. It looks like half Windsurfer cut in half. There was still a lot of experimentation going on. So this was our kite fleet back in around 2015. Finally, all on foil. We have those funny looking tubes in the sky that we used, which were not very fast, but user friendly. And then we evolved into kind of what we would call the Formula kite race program, with air ram design kites, very modern, much more modern than the tube kites, much faster, and much better angle of attack, and very refined and modern hydrofoils and boards. So going really fast, and that lasted for, I don't know, 5 years we were on that gear. And then what did the wind sports enthusiasts do? We took all that gear, we put it in the garage, and we decided to go wingfoiling. Why on earth would we do that? Why would we change everything? Well, part of it is because we could. We had the technology that made this sport work. It wouldn't have worked earlier, but I'm going to hand it to Chris, who's going to talk a little bit about the technology development.
Around in 2013, we had a combination of factors that were happening. These French hydrofoils had come in, and we had the America's Cup design teams here that we got to know and we could take advantage of. So they not only encouraged us to work on our own design, but gave us a lot of resources and help on the design and so forth. So kind of walking around this sort of montage of photographs, you have an airfoil section here that's used in a lot of hydrofoils. It was designed by Tom Spear, who recently died. Rest in peace, Tom Spear. He was part of the Oracle design team that came back and overcame that 8-1 loss. And then you have a number of different elements that go into the hydrofoil design. And so we had to figure this all out ourselves, and there's a lot of different components to it. There's the hydrodynamic design part of it, so there's CFD. There's like designing in 3-dimensional CAD, and there's processes involved in building the parts themselves. And one of the key things is trying to make the parts stiff and thin enough. And we all want perfectly rigid masts that are really long and don't bend. But practically making that happen is requires advanced materials and so forth. So these hydrofoils that we designed and developed here and tested in San Francisco Bay have changed the sport of kiteboarding and windsurfing profoundly, and resulted in one Olympic Olympic class for windsurf hydrofoils, and two, you can see this photo here in Japan with the professional windsurfing series all on hydrofoils now. Early developments for hydrofoils in the bay. Rich Miller had one that was kind of a wave following hydrofoil. It was basically unrideable. And this guy here, this is just recent. This is Johan. He's a 19-year-old kid. He's absolutely amazing. He's going 37 knots, on his board, and this guy just got second in the biggest competition in the world in France, and so that's kind of where the state of the art is at the moment.
So I'm taking the kind of Olympic part of this presentation. And so just to backtrack a little bit, the first time that one of these board sports was in the Olympics was in 1984. And so throughout my kiteboarding career, I've been involved in and seen some of this decision making on where these board sports are going. So in 2011 was the first time there was a major switchover when windsurfing was switched out for kiteboarding. That decision 6 months later was reversed, and the sports were locked in for the following 2 Olympic Games. So the upcoming 2024 Games are the first time we're going to see kiteboarding in the Olympics. Also, it is a foiling class, which had it been in the Games previously, it would have probably locked in those wide boards that have 3 fins, and we would have been sailing, old dinosaur gear. But instead, we got to see some of this development that Chris was just talking about really push the sport to where it's become. And we also here is some fun statistics for the upcoming Games. There's 10 sailing medals, and 5 of them will be foiling. And this is the first time any foiling classes will be in the Olympics. And we're already seeing 5 for the first Games. So that's like a huge just trajectory change from the old white-sailed boats that we're so used to seeing, is this massive shift, and it's fun. The sailors, they don't want to be on at least in these the board sports, they don't want to be on the displacement boards because they can go much faster. They can sail in lighter wind conditions, and it just makes a huge difference.
So now we're going to go back to wingfoiling. Which is, again, it's all the rage. A lot of the kite racers here, the kite race fleet, that was so dedicated to our sport, switched over during the pandemic into wingfoiling. Wingfoiling is cheaper, it's simpler, it's lower stress because you're not going to tangle your lines. Importantly, you can launch it just about anywhere off Johnny's dock if you want to. You can launch off a boat, off a dinghy, off rocks like this. You can't do any of that with a kite. A kite, you're always worried that something's going to go wrong. And so it was just natural for the kite community to gravitate to wingfoiling. And the other thing we've also found is that foils with some power source to get you into a wave, if that power source can then be reduced, you can ride that wave just on your foil. And that is what's going on here. It turns out this is one of the best places on the planet for riding tanker wakes and for riding Fort Point waves that come in from the Pacific, and for riding literally sailboat wakes. The foils are so good and getting better, right, Chris?
Definitely.
That you can ride the wake of a sailboat unpowered with your wing dangling behind you. So it's very compelling. And the racing aspect of it, the difference is we can build courses that bring the racers closer together. Look, the wings are not as fast as the kites right now. They're getting faster, but if you look at the actual wing that we're holding, it's the same technology that we had 10 years ago in kites. It's a big inflated tube.
Yeah, one thing about the wings is that, it just requires so little power to get going because you have a hydrofoil underneath you. You don't need all the power you used to have in a kite or a windsurfer to get going. So managing that power is a lot easier, and that's what makes it a lot safer.
That's right. So there's some interesting dynamics at play right now with a couple global organizational bodies. One is called the IWSA, International Wing Sports Association, which essentially has a lock on the Olympics. If we want this sport to go to the Olympics, they're the ones right now controlling the game. And the other one, and so they're very race focused. The other one, called the GWA, is a manufacturer's supported entity. So it's supported by F1 and Cabrina and Slingshot and other manufacturers. The Olympics don't really like that. They like to see independent organizations that are putting these races together. They don't like it to be a business. It's always a business, but they don't like it to be. And so these two, and the GWA is also kind of as a result of this conflict, they're much more freestyle focused. They actually want to race. At least as of a couple months ago, if you went on their website, there was Olympic style racing or something, referring to the Olympics. I don't know if it's still there, but they want to race. They want to be part of this. But right now, it's the IWSA, and the question is, how does St. Francis get involved in this? We have arguably the fastest and largest fleet on the planet, concentrated right here. And Johnny Heineken right now is in Lake Garda, working his way up the system that's been developed, which is really right now kind of a regional qualifier structure that the IWSA has created. And what that means is the best riders compete in these regional qualifiers, and if they win, one male, one female from each of these events, they get to go to Bali in August and compete in the Association of National Olympic Committees Global or World Beach Games in Bali. That's August of this year, so that's just a few months out. Joey Pasquale has already punched his ticket. He's going to Bali. He's a yacht club member. He was in Puerto Rico and he won that event down there, and so he's going to Bali in August. Johnny, we're hoping, will do the same thing and also get to go to Bali. But that's kind of the structure right now, is you win a qualifier and you go to an event and you get to do your stuff in front of the Olympic committees, and then they will decide whether they want to bring the sport in. So we actually talked to the IWSA to try and get one of those qualifier events here. You guys might remember. It didn't happen. They had certain interests that weren't aligned with our interests, and our interests are running the best regatta possible, which is what we did. So we ran the Spring Wingding in April. We had 62 riders from around the Western Hemisphere.
5 overall, right there.
So we'll do this event again next year. It's the Spring Wingding. That's our brand. And whether it's a world championship or a Bali Games qualifier, whatever it is, it's the Spring Wingding, and it'll happen right here on this racetrack. You did notice a lot of freestyle in that too. So we incorporated the freestyle, mostly kids, but not all kids. I was actually out there a little bit. So this is the start of the distance race, where we had the kites and the wings and the windsurfers all on hydrofoils, starting right here, going to Berkeley and back. And that was a really cool video, taken by Jamie Donaldson by drone. And so we'll see what the future holds in terms of the Olympics, but we certainly here at St. Francis Yacht Club want to play a part in it.
We have a little bit here on like the youth side of this, and I think the St. Francis and the foundation have done such a great job of like supporting young sailors. And we saw that at the Spring Wingding there were so many youth sailors here getting into it. The energy level was so high. I've never sailed in a master's fleet before, and I was a master, and I'm still not ready for that. But I think it was just a really fun, exciting dynamic to experience, and then the freestyle side, which we're showing a little bit here, is also part of it.
Didn't happen in windsurfing. Windsurfing got too complicated. I think kiteboarding had its issues, but with the wingdingers, it's a whole new territory, and it's just ideal for kids, even little kids.
And even older kids.
You could do it.
This isn't my nephew, but he's like a 60-pounder just tearing it up out there on the wing right now. Okay, so where are we heading after this? You know, I mean, everybody's always asking, like, what's the next thing? I mean, when kiting came out, I think a lot of people were like, oh, you know, what could be better than kiting? But I think with foiling, I think we're all learning and we're all being surprised by the fact that there is a whole new way of enjoying the hydrofoil. You know, there's surf hydrofoiling, and here's Johnny is just doing amazing things out here in the surf. And you know, what used to require some amount of energy, like wind or what have you, is turned into people can just use waves and they can ride around in the open ocean, just paddling up by hand or with a paddle. And so we're seeing competitions in this, and people are going out doing downwinders. People are starting out at by San Francisco airport and downwinding all the way to the San Mateo. This guy, Benji, he's just amazing, and he's pumping his modified Razor scooter with a hydrofoil on it around in some pretty crazy things. And he was telling me he's gonna go pump around in an underground lake, in the largest underground lake. I never knew there was an underground lake in Europe, but he's out there pumping around the ice in Switzerland and doing this kind of stuff. It's definitely not good for your leading edge to crash into rocks, that's for sure.
But that helps if you're trying to sell leading edges.
Yeah, but this guy's got 200,000, almost 200,000 followers, and he's the guy that does the flossing with the wetsuit full of water and all kinds of interesting stuff. So one thing about, you know, working on the hydrofoils is there's a lot of different sort of projects going on, and this is a hydrofoiling boat. Electric hydrofoil, I think technology is going to make just any kind of boating more efficient, quieter, smoother, that's for sure. Although don't take your candela out in the bay. That's if the chop is too big, you're gonna get wet. All right.
So there's a lot of applicability. I think the point is with the hydrofoil on new sports for individuals, right, to go out and play in the waves and with the wind, but also in industry, and there are probably some powerboat owners in here, certainly some sailboat owners, and it costs a lot, and we burn a lot of fuel on powerboats. If we could get those up in the air on hydrofoils, it would be a lot cheaper to get to Tinsley, right? So it's a really exciting time, and I think we're going to go to Q&A.
What's the youngest, how old are the youngest kiters? You showed me a 6-year-old. It looked like a 6-year-old. And are they on the wings?
I'm not so sure there's a lower limit, but
Close.
the kids definitely have an advantage being light. They just need so little energy to get going. You know, they can just get out there, and we see kids pick it up so quick. It's amazing. I think Al's son Kai, he was better than I'll ever be within, I don't know, a couple weeks.
So what's the learning curve on the wing? How steep, how long does it take for somebody of different skill levels to be able to sail a wing? Compare it to a kite.
We have a little teaching program over in Paradise Cay, and we have a student or two in the audience today. The learning curve is pretty steep, especially if you have sailing skills and board sports skills, and you can kind of break it down. It's the nice thing about wingfoiling is you have a wing and you have a foil. So you can put someone on a board that isn't a foiling board and give them a wing, and the wing is very intuitive. It balances itself. It's much easier than a windsurfing sail. It's easier than trimming a sail. It's just very natural feeling, right? So you get people comfortable on the wing, and then you tow them behind a dinghy or a boat or whatever, slow tow, and they learn the foiling technique separately. They don't have to think about their power. They just hold onto a rope and tow behind a boat. And then once you get the foiling and you get the winging, it's peanut butter and jelly. You put the sandwich together.
So Erica, there's going to be half foiling in the next Olympics. How does America stand in a competitive stance relative to other countries in foiling sports? What do you guess? Chris, how do we stand? How do the Americans look coming up to the 24 games in terms of?
Well, we do have 6-time Rolex Yachtswoman of the Year involved, and she's going to most likely represent us in hydrofoiling class. In the windsurfing, I think we're, I don't know, it's like, we're going up against nationally funded programs. In Great Britain, sailing athletes are fully sponsored by the government. They have programs behind it, and they're, it's full on. So we've got some good guys. I think, most recently at the World Championships, I think we had one guy in the top 10. But it's definitely a battle, and it's the same like we've always been. It's going up against fully funded programs, and trying to compete with your own private funded, or with the St. Francis help behind it.
And one thing to add, I know that they're really playing with formats. They like the concept of the winner of the last race wins the gold medal. So that's something that they've been playing around with at these European events. I know Daniela's been involved in that and at more of these regattas. And it's not just your typical windward leeward. It might be like a Sweet 16 format or something where you race in a pool of 4 and then the top 2 advance. I think they're playing with those sorts of things. So we'll kind of see how that plays out, and I don't know if that's the same thing for windsurfing as kiting.
Yeah, it is.
Speeds.
You can dominate the whole event. You can dominate the whole event in course racing, but then the actual winner is determined by, the 4 finalists, and the person who, won the course racing has an advantage, but it comes down to like the final race at the end, like Erica said.
Now, I'm going to keep asking questions, but anybody in the audience who has one, okay, Rick's got one here. We'll bring the mic over to you. We'll keep rolling until we get the mic to you. Speeds. In 15 knots of breeze, how fast are the wings going? How fast are the kites going? And what are the top speeds on each?
1.5.
1.5 wind speed?
No. 15 knots.
Yeah, 15 knots of breeze, yeah.
15 knots of breeze, okay. The kites, I want to say, are going in the low 30s knots on the fastest point of sail. Mm-hmm. So that's not necessarily upwind. Upwind is probably low 20s. Did you guys say? So wings are materially slower by a third. I'll call it a third, slower than that. But again, we talked about the structure of a wing. It's 10-year-old technology. It's old kite technology. clearly we could make a faster wing, and it's happening. They're putting higher pressures into the leading edge. They're making it more efficient. So we'll see what develops. There's some resistance from the industry to do that too quickly because things will start to get expensive, and they want to keep it simple, which is what drew so many people into the sport to begin with. So yeah, the wings are, top speeds I think are about 25 knots. But I'm not going 25 knots.
Great. First audience question.
How important has carbon fiber been to the evolution of the sport? And are there any other materials that are in play that could compete with carbon and change the game?
Yeah, definitely carbon fiber is enabling the sport to develop the components we need. There isn't really anything else that is close in terms of its ability to be molded into the forms we need. I mean, they're fairly organic forms and shapes. And so, there's all different kinds of carbon fiber, different, medium modulus, high modulus, ultra high modulus carbon fiber. There's different kinds of structural foams that are being used. There's metal carbon, laminates, like for CLGP are using titanium, like a titanium core with carbon kind of wrapped around it. But carbon fiber is absolutely, the material that's used in almost every high performance foil. Of course, you can have extruded aluminum components, but they're heavier and typically, you got other kinds of issues, corrosion and sorts of things. But carbon fiber is material of choice for sure.
So give us a real quick summary of the technological changes happening. First in boards, I saw them get smaller and smaller, and then in foils and in kites. So just give us each. What's the evolution in boards? Is it slowed down, or what's going on with evolution and change?
That's a great question. So I'd say every class, every sort of discipline has its kind of key sort of operating points. And with wing boards, you have such little energy with the wing compared to a windsurfer or a kite or an AC boat or GP 50. Getting up is important. So you got to design it so you get up as early as possible, but yet you want the wing super small so you can go fast. So that's the kind of design things we're working around. The board itself is absolutely critical, and you want the board super light, but it's got to you have to be able to get up on it. So for old people like me, you want to have it floaty so you can stand on it. For younger people that are more flexible, they can do the splits and then get up on their knees easily.
So our boards
Geoff,
boards got smaller. What's happening with the foils? What's the evolution and change in shapes and size?
So with the wing shape, you're always dealing with, do you want to make it fast and thin, or do you want to make it get up early and maybe a little bit thicker and slower? So you're trying to find that optimal point. And we use software and ChatGPT. Just kidding. No, but we try to find, and we put in a set of operating points. Like, do you want to go upwind? Because the whole angle of the foil is different when you're going upwind versus downwind. How you heel the board over is a little bit different versus upwind versus downwind. And so we're trying to just optimize the foil wings, the amount of angle we put on the wing, the size and shape of the wing, how far they are apart to get the kind of characteristics we want. And you're dealing with lift off and speed and drag at each sort of leg, and with the foils we're talking about, they're not adjustable while you sail them. They're adjusted by your weight. So if you're leading up too high, you shift your weight forward, and vice versa. And so, we're kind of stuck with this sort of T-shaped design that we've all been working with. Unlike the Moth, for example, which is continually adjusting itself. So we're just trying to find the optimal set of angles to provide us the stability and the speed at the various angles we're sailing around a course, or the type of turning and other characteristics we want for whatever segment of the sport we're dealing with, whether it's surf or pumping or what have you. There are a couple examples here. I brought up pump wing, things like 1.3 meters in span, and that little wing there is a 540. That's like about the smallest. The smallest we're using for wingboarding is about a 540.
That's the biggest one. That's the biggest one. Hold up the little one, please.
Yeah. Yeah. So that guy that's pumping around in the canyon, he's using something like that. And
With
And
a lot
that's
of
on,
scratches.
and that's on a
Yeah.
strut that's about 3 feet long? Talk about-
that one is 1.3 meters, and some people are making it 1.5 meters.
So 4 or 5 feet, 4.5 feet.
Yeah, so that's,
How long is the mast that they're riding?
the masts are, so the masts, you have kind of a trade-off, like, you see the dock starting guys, they want typically a longer mast because the board's out of the water more, you don't have to bend over quite as far to get going. So some of the pumping guys are using like an 85 or maybe even a 75 mast, and some people prefer a little bit longer. So there isn't necessarily a fixed size, but I don't know, 85 seems to be pretty good.
So it seemed like about a 6-to-1 ratio between the biggest and the smallest. What is this, high speed? Is the littler one the much higher speed?
Much higher speed. So that's the one the guy's going like 37 on.
Uh-huh. Great.
And that's supporting Johan. He's 19. He's got to be 230 pounds. He's really strong. He's going close to 38 knots with that. So.
And whereas you can change the attack angle on the Moth, you're saying when you're on your own board, you're basically doing it with your body weight?
You're doing with your body weight. And so we set up the wings, like the front wing angle and the back wing angle, to kind of give us the stability we need. The front wing is always pushing up and the back wing is always pushing down. So that's the way the system works.
Question in the audience, Bruce.
So this seems to me like a young person's sport. And Ron asked you, how young can it be? I'm more interested in the older sailor and how old you can be and still foil. In other words, is Ron Young too old to learn foiling?
Never, on anything. But
So-
how old are the oldest guys out there, the geezers?
Well, okay, there's obviously a learning element to a hydrofoil. It's
So
a
you have
little,
to be smart too?
your brain, it's funny watching people learn. They say, I don't know what I'm doing. What do I do next? How do I do this? But actually their brain is learning without them, actively trying to figure out the problem. Their brain is figuring out the problem. And I think old people can do that too, to some degree. I think it's possible, but what people say about riding on a hydrofoil is it's like snowboarding in powder or skiing in powder. It's very smooth and soft so long as you don't crash. And you can get good enough where you don't have to crash. You just go around back and forth in circles. And it's very easy on the body. It's not gonna beat you up at that point. So I think it's a good thing to think about. Now, how old? I'm not going to put a number on it because I'll probably be wrong. But I say give it a try.
I heard somebody say a 78-year-old. Your dad, Johnny, your dad is, I think he's 80 this year, isn't he? Riding close there. Could he do it?
Geoff, you were the one who brought up.
Geoff.
There's a gentleman that rides with us in Paradise Cay all the time, and he's mid-70s for sure. Walter Sanford, and he's great. He loves it. He's always out there in all conditions.
Johnny, you had a question?
I did. Part of what makes sailing so interesting, I think, for sailors is the tactics part of it. And I have not participated in any racing on a wing foil setup. I've just tried to race Geoff a little bit and been out with you guys. But this is for all three of you you guys have all sailed and kited and wingfoiled. Is the wingfoiling, does it provide that same type of tactical tactical skill as say racing a gnar like a slow boat where you're constantly searching for little puffs and dealing with tide and all that stuff? Is it a different style of racing?
I would say it has all the same tactics slow boats or in the water boats have.
Do you cover a competitor if you're up zone?
Yeah, actually you can, because these inefficient wings, I keep talking about, throw off a ton of gas. So especially at starts, you better have clear air. And so there's a tactical element to doing starts. But I do think with speed, with any sailing on foils where you get speed, even the America's Cup, you lose a little bit of the tactics, and it does become a bit of a horse race. You know, if one person gets ahead, there's sort of that piece, because even with bad air coming off a wing, if you're going fast enough, you get from one side to the other and you're not in bad air anymore. Versus a NAR, you might be stuck in a covered situation for 2 minutes, which is, you know, the death of your race. So I think you do lose something, but we do design courses with open upwind legs, so you have your choice of tacking on whatever ley line. So there's that element. There's playing shifts. There's certainly playing gusts that you do. The covering isn't quite there as much, but playing the conditions on the course is still there for sure.
So I'm an advocate of always finishing on the water. I don't like to go to the room. In fact, I don't go to the room no matter what. What's going on in terms of protesting in your sport? What is the most common protest? Is it very common, or are you likewise trying to have fewer and fewer protests?
You want to take it? I mean, I think general, let's try to have fewer protests, but definitely, you know, when you know, there's definitely a huge safety issue. So often when there is a collision, the first question is, you know, even if you're in the right, could you have avoided the collision? And you know, there's no, like, I touched the guy, or just to prove that I'm right going on. And, you know, the judges are taking it very seriously, any collision, because you've got these knives that are slicing through the water, and the last thing you want them to do is to slice into you, right?
So for wingding, we had to design a brand new course because we wanted it to be safe, A, fun for the riders, B, and fun for spectators was C. And there was a safety issue with the first mark that we were using for our downwind slalom races. When you have a pile of wings going 25 knots coming, you know, towards a mark at the same time, trying to pass through a keyhole and do a 180 back to the outer mark, you have some collisions that can happen. We tried to kind of restructure that course, and we actually couldn't get it done in time. So now we have the same course we did last year with that crazy first mark, and everyone we talked about at the beach, everyone's just a little bit more careful. We don't see or haven't seen protests happen. It's a community that tries to be respectful and stay out of each other's way and give each other, you know, room when they need room. There are quite a few people who have never raced a boat before, though. So during the spring wingding, we did have a symposium on rules, where Brian McDonald, who's an international rules judge, gave a talk, and we had two of the kids walking back and forth with their wings inflated in the starting line room, showing here's port, here's starboard, here's upwind, here's downwind, here's an overlap, right? All those basic things to instruct all the riders that had shown up. Again, many of which had never raced a boat before. This was kind of their first time. So there's some basic rules and, you know, behavior that we encourage on the water, and maybe as a result of that, we didn't have one protest for the whole 3-day regatta.
Geoff's got a question.
Is this working? I have a question. I'm just curious if anyone's experimented with using carbon fiber to construct a wing's leading edge and the strut, as opposed to having the air bladders. It seems like it'd be a lot more efficient. Has anyone ever tried to do that?
Yeah, definitely. Like a rigid wing that looks kind of like an airplane wing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's there's some guys doing that now. So hopefully it doesn't come to that, but I'm sure that it probably provides some efficiency that, you know, a leading edge, an inflatable leading edge wing doesn't have. So I'm not sure but that's certainly, you know, I'm not sure about whether it's going to happen or not, but I've seen photos of people developing wings like that.
So Erica, you were a world champion a couple of times, twice, and then you went off to have babies, and now you're getting back in the game.
What's it like to come back into a sport after you've seen a whole lot of evolution? And talk about how it feels to you go kite boarding these days, foiling these days.
Yeah, you know, when I was competing on kites, mainly it was on the displacement style boards on the water, and foiling kind of came more to the production fleet here at Chrissy, kind of the time I was phasing out to have my little guys. And so I would say, like, then I came back into it and winging was here. So, you know, I threw my stuff in the garage and got a whole new quiver of gear. And what I don't want to see is I don't want to see too much of this locking in gear and, okay, well, we have now we have windsurfing, kiting, and winging. And there's only so many people here that do those sports. And so the second you start breaking it all up, then somebody starts focusing on wing Olympic class, whatever that becomes potentially, and then you have the production wing class, and then how does the St. Francis run an event with 60 competitors if we only started with 60 competitors and 20 are doing one and 40 are doing the other? And I think that's what right now is really fun. Like, this is the future of foiling. Our presentation, like, nobody knows what that's looking like, but we're gonna experience it. And all I can say is right now, it's really fun to not be in that point. It's really fun to all of us be here riding the latest and greatest and showing up with new stuff to the beach.
So Geoff, how big are the fleets? How many wingers are out there? How many foiling kiters are out there? Give me the numbers in the Bay Area, let's say. And what do we represent in the world?
So for spring wingding, which was a broader, like a wet Pacific, Pacific Coast Championship, but we had people from Caribbean, East Coast, Brazil. That was 62 riders that signed up. I think probably 58 or so actually rode. So that was good. That was a healthy number. And I think last year for the equivalent event that we did, that was intentionally smaller. It was a 2-day event, not a 3-day event, called No Strings Attached. I think we had 40 some odd riders, so we grew by half for that. The wing fleet for the Friday night series that we do, right now is about 22, but I think we'll have more drop-ins, and I'm looking at a couple over there, maybe 3.
But like, what's happened to kiting because of
Right.
this?
Right.
Give us the same survey of kiting.
Yeah, and so I think we're in the low 20s in terms of competitive wingers. Kiters, we had fleets of 45 during the peak, maybe 35 local riders, and that's down. I think there were 17 actually signed up, which, yeah, I counted last night. That's pretty good.
Really?
Yeah, 17 signed up. So it's still bumping along. I think they're riding a little bit of this Olympic wave. That's exciting. Everyone knows the sport's gonna be going into the Olympics and is gonna get broadcasted around the world, and maybe some new entrants. But I don't know. I'm sort of skeptical about the future of kiting in the Olympics, or how it's going to be reconfigured with this new energy that's coming into winging. It could be challenging for kiting. And then the windsurfing class, foiling windsurfing class, is about 10 right now.
Yeah, I'd say about 10, yeah.
10 maybe 12. And it's been that for the last probably 8 years or so, or 9 years, and so that's pretty stable until they can no longer windsurf. I expect they'll be staying on those boards.
Question to the audience, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how much it would cost to get started, just in general.
Yeah, for each of the 3.
Chris wanted to take the question, but then he handed the mic back to me. You have a customer out there, come on. Erica, do you want to take this? You just bought all new gear.
Yeah, good. Ballpark numbers.
Ballpark numbers, I mean, the cost of lessons might want to be considered in your number. For winging, you probably want to get like 2 wings, and those are, I don't know, $600-700. Are they more than that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, $1,000 per wing, and then my recommendation is to always buy used gear. So go on Craigslist, go on iKitesurf, and look for some gear, and you can probably get a foil and a board for less than $1,000. That would be something that you use, learn, resell to the next guy next year, to just get yourself going.
$3 grand, is that a round number? 4. And how much is lessons?
Yeah, $3 grand. So like 2 wings and then a board and foil setup. I don't know, are they doing lessons? They're probably $400-500 a lesson.
Okay, how many lessons? What's the curve like? You gotta go to
It
10
depends,
lessons,
like, Geoff talked about, well, you have to learn the wing, and then you have to learn the foil, and peanut butter and jelly. It's good to learn those separately, build up those skills before you put them together. So, if you know someone with a board and you can get your hands on a foil, that's a free lesson. Or you kind of figure that out. So it's kind of individual decision, I would say.
And we gotta give a plug to Chip Watson, because he's sort of like been the ambassador for all kiteboarding sports of all kinds, including foiling. And if you really are interested, you just go up to Christie Field when Chip is around, and he'll help you get started and put you in touch with everybody that you kind of need to know about, really. Let's see, now everybody's wondering if the famous writer who's in the audience, Carl Nolte, who I think is in his late 80s, if he's going to be foiling this next weekend. Carl, have you decided, are you taking your board out or not? No, he's not going out? All right, then I'm safe, I can go out. I'll be the oldest guy giving it a shot out there. Well, thanks very much for showing us the latest, giving us an update on the whole foiling, which is, many of us think, the future of sailing. Those guys who still have displacement slugs sailing around in the water are having fun, but it seems like you're converting a lot of younger people, which is really good for every game, getting younger demographics, a longer product life cycle, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks so much for helping us, Geoff. Thanks so much, Chris. Thanks so much, Erica. Terrific. Thank you for a really good Wednesday yachting luncheon. And with that, we adjourn.
All right, guys.
This has been a presentation of the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.